I knew my sister hated me, but I didn't realize how far she'd go not until that Christmas night, when she pulled me into the center of the room like a prop, smiled sweetly at her CEO boyfriend, and used me as the punchline to impress him. The laughter stung, but the look in her eyes, that was the real wound. That was the moment Callista Rowan, finally understood my pain had always been her entertainment. I had no idea that within minutes, the only person she wanted to impress would be the one who destroyed everything she'd built. By the time I reached 41, the rhythm of my days had settled into something steady: spreadsheets, audit trails, and long hours spent making sure numbers added up in a field where they mattered more than people pretended. It was a quiet kind of work, the kind that rarely won applause, but I preferred its clarity over the noise I grew up with. In my family, volume always outweighed honesty, and I learned early that the person who spoke last rarely spoke the truth. Our house in South Denver was small, but the shadows inside it could stretch for miles. After my father passed when I was 12, the balance shifted quickly. When my mother remarried, the center of the household moved with her, orbiting closer and closer to Lyrica, until nearly everything seemed arranged around her shine. She had that effortless way of taking up space, walking into a room like it was built for her, laughing in a way that made everyone else feel like background actors. I didn't resent it then, I just adjusted, slipping into the edges where I caused the least disturbance, while she collected praise recitals, awards, later promotions. I collected folders, acceptance letters, certifications, commendations from supervisors. I kept them stacked neatly in a drawer because no one asked to see them, and I stopped offering. When Lyrica became Chief Communications Officer for the biggest health foundation in Colorado, my mother nearly burst with pride. Neighbors heard about it, cousins heard about it, even the barista down the street heard about it. My achievements never traveled as far as our front door. Still, affection doesn't vanish overnight. I cared for her, or at least for the version of her I hoped existed beneath the gloss. But with every passing year, the roles hardened, she dazzled. I cleaned up. She missed deadlines. I fixed them. She made promises. I kept them. And no matter how hard I tried to step out of the shadow, the contrast grew sharper. I didn't imagine anything would change. People like me don't expect upheaval. We expect continuity. Yet everything shifted the day I opened a routine expense file, just another line item in a long list, and felt something in my gut tighten. What looked like a harmless accounting hiccup would become the first crack in a structure my sister believed could never break. Monday's cold had that sharp, metallic edge that made everything feel a little too vivid, and maybe that was why the number on the screen stopped me the second it appeared. $17,850. Influencer partnership. Emergency healthcare campaign. Not outrageous. Not insignificant. Just large enough to be useful for someone who hoped it might slide through unnoticed. I opened the system log, letting rows of timestamps spill across the screen. The final edit time flickered up 2:12 a.m. The user ID belonged to someone from Communications Lyrica's division. A familiar tension settled behind my ribs. I forced myself to breathe. My job was to ask questions, not jump to conclusions. Yet something about this file stirred a quiet unease deeper than the numbers could explain. I spent the evening combing through related entries, cross-checking, matching patterns. At 9:47 p.m., the first real fracture appeared. A nearly identical payment, same purpose, same vendor but a different amount, and approved by a different person. This one bore Quentin's electronic signature. Only, it wasn't right. The slant was off, the spacing wrong. Digital signatures rarely lie, but whoever created this one underestimated the value of small details. A thin current of fear slithered through me, not of discovering wrongdoing, but of where it might lead and who might be standing on the other side of it. I clicked deeper into the archive and stumbled onto something I didn't expect: a campaign report from 3 years ago, attached to Lyrica's name. The metadata listed a final editor, me. I stared at it, unblinking. I couldn't recall touching that file. But there it was, my name stamped neatly under hers. It hit me all at once how often I had quietly patched her errors, smoothed her edges, done the invisible work she didn't have the patience for. I had forgotten the moment, but the pattern was unmistakable. A heaviness settled in my chest. I had been used before, without hesitation, without acknowledgement. And if I wasn't careful, it was about to happen again, 3 days later. As I ate lunch on the 6th floor, Lyrica appeared across from me with the kind of confidence someone has when they believe the world bends for them. She slid into the chair, crossed her legs, and gave me that bright PR smile I'd seen her use on donors and press releases alike. She asked if I was reviewing her project. I didn't respond. The silence was answer enough. Her posture tightened, and she leaned forward, voice softening into something meant to sound sisterly but edged with warning. She said there were things better left untouched, matters that didn't need to be inspected too thoroughly. I took a slow sip of lukewarm coffee, feeling it settle like a stone in my stomach, and told her I'd look at whatever needed to be looked at. Her expression cooled instantly. The warmth in her eyes drained out, replaced by a thin layer of impatience, the kind people get when they realize persuasion isn't working. She warned me not to make things difficult for myself. It wasn't loud, but the intent sliced clean. That night, when I logged back in, my audit access had been reduced. A key invoice vanished from the system, but my offline backup confirmed what was missing. At 11:13 p.m., an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No subject line, just a short message urging me to check the vendor's address. I followed the trail, expecting a dead end, and instead found something worse, a building that existed, and a business that didn't. A hollow feeling opened in my chest. Someone inside the organization saw what I was seeing, someone who couldn't speak up but needed me to keep going. For the first time, I realized I wasn't the only one afraid of what lay beneath those numbers, i.e., 2 days after the anonymous message, I stepped into the dim underground garage and found Lyrica waiting beside my car, arms folded, her face stripped of every polished layer she usually wore in public. She didn't greet me. She didn't need to. The tension pouring off her said enough. When she asked if I understood what I was doing, the way she used my name made my back stiffen. It didn't sound like family. It sounded like someone accustomed to snapping their fingers to make problems disappear. I unlocked my door, telling her I was simply doing my work. But she followed with a cutting laugh and a warning dressed as a reminder. She said digging too deep would only hurt the wrong people. When I asked whether she meant herself or the man she was so determined to impress, her smile froze in place tight, strained, exposed. She reached into her bag and set a white envelope on my hood, offering a promotion and a raise if I stopped the audit. It was bribery wearing perfume. I locked my car and walked past her. She called after me that I didn't understand my place. For once, the comment didn't land the way she wanted. By midday, whispers were moving through my floor. Rumors that I was unstable, emotional, difficult. The phrasing was unmistakably hers. Later, when I tried logging into the audit system, a red notification appeared. My permissions had been restricted by request of communications. They weren't just leaning on me, they were building walls. But I still had my offline backups. That afternoon, Quentin emailed, asking me to come to his office. He didn't dance around anything. He asked if anyone had tried to stop my audit. Instead of answering directly, I asked if he was more worried about me or the documents carrying his signature. He finally looked up, and the certainty in his voice was clear. He hadn't signed those invoices. Someone else had done it for him, and I knew exactly who had both the access and the audacity. Leaving the building that night, I felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes on me, not predatory strategic, the kind of attention people give when they're calculating what you know and how to stop you from saying it. I drove home fast, double-checking the locks the moment I walked inside. Near midnight, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number telling me to walk away. The warning wasn't dramatic, but it carried weight. Someone besides Lyrica was invested in my silence. Minutes later, a junior legal staffer sent a discreet Slack message, admitting he'd seen the original invoice before it was altered. He sent it to me. The original amount was $12,500 lower. The routing trail showed part of the money heading to the fake Los Angeles vendor, the rest flowing to an account in St. Thomas. This wasn't sloppy paperwork. It was deliberate siphoning. The next morning, passing the big conference room, I saw Lyrica rehearsing a presentation with my name plastered across a slide, framing me as the cause of the delays. She was preparing her escape route, and I was the shield she planned to sacrifice. I took a photo. I wasn't letting her rewrite this story again. An hour later, Quentin emailed asking me to present my findings to the board the following week. I'd never been invited to that level before. It meant he believed something serious was unfolding, and he wanted me to expose it. That evening, another anonymous file arrived, the CEO's real signature, side by side. The difference was unmistakable. Someone had forged Quentin's approval multiple times. Someone with Lyrica's level of access. I stared at the screen, realizing the truth had finally begun outrunning her lies, and it was gaining speed. Monday morning settled over the Denver office like a gray film, the kind that made every sound sharper than it should be. Walking down the hallway, my footsteps hit the floor in heavy beats, matching the pulse climbing in my throat. This wasn't an audit anymore. I had walked into someone's territory, and they knew it. I opened my laptop, connected the external drive that held every backup, and waited. The system lagged, buffers dragging, until a red alert snapped across the screen. Access to financial systems temporarily suspended. The order came from the COO, someone who never touched audit permissions. Listen. His assistant claimed he was in meetings all day, conveniently out of reach. They weren't just blocking access. They were preparing to redirect the entire investigation. But they didn't know everything that mattered was already saved in my possession. Outside, on the way to my car, a black SUV idled in the shadows. No headlights, just the hum of an engine. By the time I started my car, it pulled away as if it had never been there. Nobody at my company drove something that expensive. Whoever sat behind those tinted windows wasn't watching me for curiosity. They were guarding something. That night, a fake legal email landed in my inbox, urging me to stop investigating. The domain was wrong. A cheap attempt at authority. Someone wanted me silent enough to impersonate an entire department. I reopened the invoices and traced every routing number. That's when the truth widened. Not one or two, but 7 payments had been rerouted offshore, totaling $1.2 million. And the final approval wasn't Lyrica or Quentin. It belonged to, Keller, our CFO. A chill rolled through me. Lyrica wasn't acting alone. She was only one piece of a much larger scheme, one I had stumbled directly into. I arrived early the next morning, hoping to get into the system before anyone noticed. But the moment I stepped inside, security told me HR needed to see me. Those words always spelled danger. The HR manager informed me I was under internal investigation for accessing restricted financial data and possibly fabricating evidence. It was the exact move Lyrica had used on others, turned the truth teller into the threat. I didn't argue. I simply said I would provide everything through protocol, knowing Quentin would be the one reviewing the report. While she stepped out, I noticed a file left beside the printer. My name was printed at the top, root cause analysis, audit failure. See? Rowan. Lyrica was preparing to blame the entire financial mess on me. I photographed every page. That evening, snow fell hard against my windows, muffling the world. A final anonymous email arrived with a video. Grainy footage showed Lyrica and Keller arguing him, accusing her of promising I would never dig deep. Her insisting she would handle me. They had counted on me to stay quiet, but they forgot auditors know exactly where to look when things rot. At 9, Quentin emailed. He wanted my full report ready for the board meeting in Aspen on Christmas morning. My hands shook not from fear, but because everything was finally converging. And this time, the truth was no longer on her side. I arrived in Aspen late on the afternoon of December 24th, the lodge glowing against the heavy snow like something torn from a holiday postcard. But the warmth of the lights couldn't disguise what waited inside. The moment I stepped through the doors, every conversation dipped, and a dozen familiar faces turned to look at me, relatives I hadn't seen in over a decade, colleagues Lyrica had invited for her own theatrics, and even members of the board who had no business being at a family gathering unless something was very wrong. Then she appeared at the top of the stairs, descending as if the whole place existed solely for her entrance. The red dress, the practiced smile, the confidence none of it hinted at offshore transfers or forged signatures. She told me I was late, her voice sharp enough to cut, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Quentin arrived minutes later, his usual calm replaced by something colder, heavier. Lyrica clung to his arm, whispering assurances I knew were meant to shield her. Not him. He didn't give her so much as a glance. When everyone sat down, she stood, lifting her wineglass as if presenting a performance. She started to paint me as the weak link, the cause of delays, the burden on everyone's shoulders. Set my knife down, the metallic strike slicing through the room. Before she could continue, Quentin rose and told her it was enough, his voice anchoring the air in place. A lodge employee appeared and switched on the large television. The screen lit up with Quentin's laptop, and color drained from Lyrica's face. He announced the emergency board meeting, then let the evidence speak: the original and altered invoices, the real and forged signatures, the offshore transfers, and finally, the video of her with Keller. Silence settled thick around us, as if the lodge itself were holding its breath. Quentin ended with a single truth: I hadn't said a word. The data had, and for the first time, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. Keller lurched to his feet, pale as the snow outside, only to be blocked by two board members. My family sat frozen, my mother staring as though she no longer recognized the daughter she had spent years praising. Quentin moved to the final slide, a recommendation to terminate Lyrica immediately for her role in the misconduct. No explanations, no negotiation, just consequence. Lyrica cracked beneath the weight of it. She asked if he was firing her in front of her family, as if the audience mattered more than the crime. He told her he was protecting the organization she'd betrayed. Then she turned to me with a mix of agony and rage, asking why I'd do this to her. I told her the truth had spoken for itself. She insisted I was her sister. I told her I used to believe that too. The board voted 9-0. Immediate termination. Not one person defended her. Quentin delivered the final blow, his words sealing the fate she'd crafted for herself. And in the suffocating quiet that followed, I felt no triumph, only a slow, quiet release. That night unfolded with the kind of swiftness that comes only when the truth detonates in public. HR and legal launched an emergency session right there in the lodge, their voices low but urgent as Keller was escorted out by two federal compliance officers who had been called in to assess the scope of the financial breach. My family tried to pull me aside, demanding explanations they never wanted until everything collapsed. For the first time in my life, I didn't follow. Quentin approached me quietly, keeping a respectful distance, as if he sensed how raw everything felt. He thanked me for my courage, but I told him I had only done what was right. He replied that doing the right thing was often the hardest path. For once, I believed someone meant those words. My mother rushed to me afterward, panic twisting her features. She begged me to save Lyrica, insisting she hadn't meant for any of this to happen. In her eyes, my sister's intentions mattered more than her actions. In that moment, something inside me clicked into place. They had never truly seen me, never cared to. I had always been the fixer, the buffer, the tool. I told her I had already helped Lyrica far too much. 2 weeks later, the official investigation began. Lyrica was fully suspended, stripped of access, and facing potential federal charges. Keller was transferred to a separate inquiry. The board issued a formal commendation for me, along with an immediate promotion offer. But I declined. I didn't step foot in the office. Instead, I stayed home, clearing out closets, drawers, and shelves. Each object a reminder of years spent shrinking myself so someone else could shine. One morning, an email from Quentin appeared in my inbox. He told me he'd hold a place for me whenever I was ready. No pressure, no deadline, just an open door. I read it more times than necessary. Not because I craved validation, but because I realized I no longer feared being underestimated. For the first time, I wasn't standing in my sister's shadow. I wasn't holding anything together for anyone else. I stepped into my own quiet, steady life, and this time, I walked forward by choice. I moved to Boulder just as the last patches of snow began to loosen their grip on the sidewalks. The apartment was small, bright, and quiet in a way that felt intentional: white walls, a warm kitchen, and windows framing the flatirons like a painting meant only for me. I bought a small wooden table and set it beside the glass, wanting a place where sunlight could reach me without asking permission. That evening, I cooked myself a late Christmas dinner: a small turkey breast, roasted potatoes, cranberries simmered on the stove. When I plated the meal, I gave myself the best pieces, the ones I used to hand over without thinking. No one frowned. No one corrected me. No one implied I was asking for too much. I ate slowly, letting the warmth settle in my chest like a long-delayed exhale. I didn't need applause or witnesses or validation. I needed this space where I didn't have to fold myself smaller to fit someone else's comfort. Outside, a light snowfall brushed the window. I closed my eyes and felt a quiet smile rise. For the first time in my life, I chose the best for myself, and, for the first time, no one took it away.